Hello and welcome to another edition of Brainstorming Basketball. My name is Armand, and in today's episode I'm going to be talking about a couple ideas for hypothetical NBA trades. I hope you guys are all doing well in this quarantine. I know it's a busy and boring time. Please everybody be productive. Do something to better yourself today for the future, alright? With this time that I've been thinking about a couple trade ideas that I think could be interesting for both parties to spice up things in the NBA. Now, I want you guys to remember that these are just hypothetical ideas. Doesn't mean that these are going to happen or I think that they will happen. It's just things that I think are interesting, and I think that both teams would take some initiative in making this happen if it was brought to the table, alright? So without further ado, let's get started. Trade idea number one. This one is between two arch rival teams, and this is why these kind of trades don't really get done often, and that's why this one is probably unrealistic at its core, just because these two teams don't like each other, and that's the Warriors and the Rockets. And the trade that I'm presenting is the Warriors send Draymond Green and they send Kevon Looney to Houston for Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, and a second round pick. Now, why would either team want to do this? Let's look at the Warriors side first. Giving up Draymond. Draymond is obviously essential to the Warriors' success and has been, but now the reason I think that this trade could make sense is because maybe the Warriors look at him as more harm than good, more of a distraction than a helper at this stage in his career. With getting PJ Tucker back, they get somebody, although PJ's older, they get somebody that can kind of replace what Draymond does for them at a lesser price, and Eric Gordon gives them a sixth man off their bench that can, become a splash cousin, I guess you could say. With the Rockets doing this trade, they get, if they want to play small ball, who's a better small ball center than Draymond Green? And you want to motivate Draymond Green? How about sending him, okay, the Warriors, you don't want me? I'm going to go to Houston. I'm going to ruin your lives. That's Draymond Green's mentality as a competitor. So I could totally see the Rockets talking themselves into, if we get this guy, we can get him motivated and get him right. And not only that, they'll get Kevon Looney, who I don't know if he could really, hang if the Rockets want to play small ball, but nice little backup center there. And that is trade idea number one. Now, obviously, like I said, this one is kind of unrealistic because it's very rare to see two rivals make a trade like that, but let me know what you think about this trade in the comment section below. And if you have any ideas to make this trade better, let me know. Let's go on to trade idea number two. This one is a rumor that we've been hearing about lately involving Chris Paul and the New York Knicks. This one is going to be Chris Paul from Oklahoma City to New York for Julius Randle, Taj Gibson, and Elfrid Payton. And why would either team do this one? Well, let's look at it this way. The Knicks want to get Chris Paul because they want a culture change. They're not really concerned about his contract at this stage. He's making $38.5 million a year, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. But for the Knicks, they're not paying anybody else right now. And yes, they want to be players in 2021 free agency, but for now, what better idea for them than to make a trade for Chris Paul, right? I mean, I'm not a Knicks fan, so I don't know how Knicks fans feel about that idea, but he does change a culture. He did it right here in Oklahoma City by making the Thunder go from, potentially borderline playoff team, maybe even a lottery team, to all of a sudden, at the point of coronavirus striking, they were the 5th seed in the West. So Chris Paul's impact definitely changes a culture and changes a locker room. And he can definitely get something out of guys like RJ Barrett that maybe other players can't do. Now, why would the Thunder do this trade? Well, you get out of paying $38.5 million for a 35-year-old Chris Paul. You let Shai Gilgeous-Alexander take the ropes of the team. And Julius Randle, you can get him in Oklahoma City, maybe get him motivated, and now he becomes your small ball center or power forward going forward. and then Taj Gibson and Elfrid Payton are contracts that you're going to get out of eventually. So basically, the Thunder do this trade to save $20 million, and they basically say, Chris Paul, you did your job for us. Thank you so much. You helped grow our locker room and our culture, and now we're ready to move in another direction. Again, guys, let me know what you think about this trade in the comment section below. Let's get on to trade idea number 3. And this one is one that, if you're a close friend of mine, I guarantee you I've spammed you with this trade idea numerous times before. This one's involving my beloved Chicago Bulls. And I want to make one thing clear. I'm not in favor of trading Zach LaVine just for the hell of it. I don't want to just get rid of Zach LaVine just because, oh yeah, I don't like him. No. I would only do it for very, very few players. And one of those players I have an unhealthy obsession for is the Atlanta Hawks' Kevin Huerter. When I watch Kevin Huerter play, I see a shooter that resembles shooters that have come and gone in history, such as Reggie Miller and Ray Allen. I see that type of lethalness in his shooting stroke and his ability to just flat out, he's a gunner. Now, when you talk about LaVine, he has some of those same intangibles and same offensive skill sets, but he doesn't possess the defensive ability or the defensive wanting to dominate that end, and he's also very isocentric in his offense. For those reasons, I wouldn't be so upset about seeing him leave. Now, this trade idea here is Zach LaVine to the Atlanta Hawks for Kevin Huerter, Dwayne Dedmon, and a first-round pick swap. Now, that pick swap is important because the Hawks, as it currently stands, would have the 3rd pick in the draft. The Bulls are looking at the 7th pick in the draft. And so with that swap, the Bulls could now take their pick of who they want, and new general manager, president of basketball operations, Arturas Karnisovas, can pick between Danny Avdija, maybe Wiseman is still there, maybe Obi Toppin, whoever he likes. He can get his pick of the litter there. So not only are you getting Kevin Huerter, you are also getting a pick. Let's assume LaMelo and Anthony Edwards go 1 and 2. Now you can pick between the rest of the guys and really, really change the direction of this franchise going forward. Again, guys, let me know what you think about that trade in the comment section below. And let's get on to trade number 4. This one has 2 teams involved from the Western Conference, the Utah Jazz and the San Antonio Spurs. This one is an idea that I came up with because of the controversy surrounding coronavirus, and that's basically involving Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and their relationship being basically past the point of repair, according to some sources. And this would send Rudy Gobert to San Antonio for LaMarcus Aldridge and the Spurs 2021 first round pick, unprotected. Now, why would the Jazz do this? Donovan Mitchell, I feel like, would be better suited playing with a big man that can stretch the floor. He doesn't really need a rim protecting big man. Utah's strength has been their defense. That's been their calling card, and a lot of that is because of Rudy Gobert. But I believe a lot of that is also because of Quinn Snyder and his system. They really buy into defense as a whole in Utah. So losing Gobert, although it would hurt, in my opinion, it wouldn't be a death sentence for their defense. I still think that they would have a very, very solid defense without Gobert. Adding Aldridge and adding his newly found three-point shot would give Donovan Mitchell a pick-and-pop partner, would give Mike Conley a pick-and-pop partner, Joe Ingles a pick-and-pop partner, that I think that they've been lacking and missing with the floor spacing. Adding Gobert for San Antonio now gives them a quote-unquote star player, and also gives them a guy who's about 8 years younger than LaMarcus Aldridge is, gives them a piece to build with going forward. And the first round pick, if you're the Jazz, you're gambling that the Spurs are going to be bad next year, whereas the Spurs are gambling we get Gobert and we're going to be better next year. The Spurs are an offensively oriented team that has been one of the worst defensive teams, so adding Gobert, in theory, would make their defense go from below average to maybe average, slightly above average. That's the thinking here. Now, whether both teams would agree to this, again, two teams in the same conference trading, relatively star level players. It's rare, but it can happen, and I do think that this one, especially with both guys only having 1 year remaining on their deals, might be one that we see come to fruition if it was brought to the table. Obviously, these are hypotheticals. And now I have one final trade for you guys today, and this one is maybe arguably the spiciest one because of how many players are involved in this one. This one involves the Indiana Pacers and the Philadelphia 76ers. Two teams in the Eastern Conference that are relatively, fighting for the top of the East. This one is a big one, all right? So let's get all the names out there. Going from Philadelphia to Indiana, Al Horford, Josh Richardson, and Matisse Thybulle. All right, three big names. Going to Indiana for Victor Oladipo, Jeremy Lamb, and Edmond Sumner. Now, why would Indiana want to do this? Well, Indiana, Victor Oladipo next year is going to be on the last year of his contract. So with that comes a lot of anxiety and uncertainty for Larry Bird and Kevin Pritchard and the Pacers front office, because it signifies that he could leave. In theory, he could leave. Not only could he leave, but when he came back from injury, he didn't look like Victor Oladipo. Now, if you were to ask me as a gambling man, I would say, yeah, he'll get back to being himself eventually, but in life there is no guarantees. And for that reason, you have to always take into account the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is he might end up being a below average version of himself for the rest of his career. He had a traumatic injury that might not allow him to be himself again. I hope not, but it's possible. With this trade, Indiana gets a guy in Josh Richardson, who is a very, very solid starting shooting guard in the NBA. They add Matisse Thybulle, who is a known commodity already as a defensive stopper and a specialist for sure, for a long time to come in this league. And then to get those two solid pieces, they also have to take on Al Horford. And Al Horford has what has already become one of the worst contracts in the NBA at $28 million per year for the next 3 years after this year. So, two net positives and one negative. Now for the Sixers, they get Oladipo in hopes that they can transform him back to being the guy that he was prior to the injury. And not only do they get that, now they add a true closer for the Ben Simmons-Joel Embiid tandem, a true closer with Oladipo, a guy who the fans in Philly, he has a little bit of that Iverson dynamic that I think the fans could really, really get behind Vic and really root for him in that way. And then Edmond Sumner is a nice young point guard that they can try to develop, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And then Jeremy Lamb suffered a horrific knee injury, but he probably will not play for the majority, if not the entirety of next year, but then they get him for the following year, and Jeremy Lamb's a solid scorer off your bench. So that trade idea right there is a lot to process, but if Indiana feels like Oladipo might be on the move after this season, they got to start looking at ideas for trades. And this one right here is just one of many ideas that we could come up with for Oladipo. If you guys like this kind of concept and want to hear more trade ideas, please let me know. Remember, fellas, please like, comment, and subscribe right down below. And until next time, Armand out.